With COVID killing more than 1,900 people a day, Haitian migrants in Texas facing deportation en masse, and several states still recovering from devastating natural disasters, the U.S. is barreling towards yet another crisis if Congress doesn't come together to raise the debt ceiling before the end of the month. If they don't and the country defaults on its debts, economists say we could fall into an immediate recession, with one expert from Moody Analytics telling the Washington Post the economic disaster could cost the country up to 6 million jobs, as much as $15 trillion in household wealth, and send the unemployment rate surging to roughly 9%. Other than that, no problem. House Democrats passed a bill yesterday to raise the limit over the objection of every Republican in the chamber. And the GOP leader in the Senate has already vowed not to work on any effort in that chamber either.
Since Democrats decided to go it alone, they will not get Senate Republicans' help with raising the debt limit. I've explained this clearly and consistently for over 2 months. Democrats decided to govern alone. Their unified democratic government must put basic governing duties ahead of partisan wish lists. If they don't, the consequences for our country would be catastrophic.
Because the debt ceiling bill and a larger Democratic budget proposal on child care, Medicare expansion, climate change are financial bills, they're able to use a process known as reconciliation, which would let them bypass a promised Republican filibuster. But they'd still need every single Democrat and independent to vote in its favor, and right now moderates like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema are looking just as likely to join up with fellow Democrats as Mitch McConnell is. It's just the latest battle in a months-long war within the Democratic Party that's been stalling many of the key components of President Biden's agenda. And with the 2022 midterms and a possible upset to the party's majority in Congress inching closer by the day, will they ever be able to get it done? Joining me are Shannon O'Brien, former state treasurer, former Democratic candidate for governor, and Nadeem Mazen, former Cambridge City Councilor and CEO of Greenlight, a social media network for content creators. Nadeem, Shannon, it's great to see you both. Thanks for being here.
Hello. Thank you.
Nadeem, let me start with you. Police reform efforts failed, officially dead as of today. That was Democrats and Republicans who couldn't agree. But is that a sign of more failures to come, even when the only issue is all Democrats agreeing with all Democrats?
You know, in the issues to come, I think we're seeing a lot of posturing now, of course, but I think we're actually eventually going to see reconciliation, no pun intended. We've got to push these things across. There has been a bifurcation of efforts, and different parts of the party have their eyes on different parts, the infrastructure versus the social spending. But in the end, there has been a longstanding agreement that we're going to do both. And I think despite the posturing, we got to get there.
Well, Shannon, Nancy Pelosi agrees with Nadeem. Here is the Speaker of the House just yesterday.
This is called the legislative process. This is called the Democratic Party. It really is in the mix of all of it. And that's what's pretty exciting, because everybody has their say. We come together and we'll get it done.
Are you as optimistic as Mazen and Pelosi, Shannon O'Brien?
I'm cautiously optimistic, because I think that this is a survival issue for the Democrats and the Democratic majority. History will tell you that, the party in presidential power loses seats in off-election years. And obviously, the Democrats have a very slim majority. I think the Democrats ultimately understand what being in the majority in both the House and the Senate means. So while I think there's an awful lot of posturing going on, I do think that you will see many Democrats falling in line behind Nancy Pelosi. She is a master negotiator. She knows how to count her votes, and she is an incredibly strong leader that I believe is our best hope right now.
But it's not
success.
just Pelosi who has to succeed. Chuck Schumer needs to succeed in the Senate, too. And staying with you, Shannon, you're a former legislator. You've been in a room, I assume, with the Senate president or the governor trying to push you somewhere. Steny Hoyer, the number 2 Democrat, said today, yesterday, whatever, Biden hopefully has the secret sauce. Can a president of the same party, and he's meeting with all these players today, convince legislators to do something they don't want to do, particularly if they think it's going to be a problem for them back home?
Absolutely. And I do think that we have a president who wants to engage. President Biden knows that he needs to have a success, and he knows that that window is very narrow. So I do think that you will continue to see Joe Biden behind the scenes pressing people. I do think that he's kind of been a little bit hands-off at this point in time, but I think that they recognize what they need to do to get his agenda done this year.
Nadeem, despite your optimism or cautious optimism, whatever you want to call it a minute ago, it seems to me that people like you, at least as of the moment, are the problem. People on the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. We had Ayanna Pressley on the radio a couple of days ago. Her position is like a lot of progressives in the House, which is we will not vote yes, even on the bipartisan physical infrastructure package, until the Senate has voted yes on the child care, human services, climate change, $3.5 trillion package. It isn't even drafted yet. So couldn't the progressives be the ones that unravel the whole party here?
You know, this has been a popular topic of conversation, a little bit revisionist, though, because the agreement from the outset was that this two-track would come together and that each part of the party, the progressives and the moderates, would have some finger on the outcome,
That's
have
correct.
their finger on the balance of the outcome. And so now it's actually wonderful for the first time in my life to see progressives with the power to say, hey, you can't now go back on the agreement we made. Of course, there's going to be a battle about that in the press and a battle to reframe who's to blame. But in the end, each side and their obligations need to be met. And it's for the better outcome of the nation. The nation needs this spending in order to compete. And that should be very clear now.
Well, yeah, but again, that's a nice statement of principle. But as of the moment, they have the ability to sink not just one, but two huge transformational measures. I mean, that is factually accurate.
You know, you even have moderates in budget saying, you know, if it doesn't pass the first time, it'll pass the second time. Okay. So it's not all doom and gloom. It's going to get through. You
know, I want to talk to you about the Senate. You mentioned Pelosi in the House, Shannon O'Brien, a minute ago. But, you know, every day I read an article about how Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, because they won't vote to get rid of the filibuster, allegedly, at least as of the moment, are really dooming the Biden agenda. It seems to me the person who is dooming the Biden agenda is Joe Biden. Joe Biden, we just talked about him bringing people in the room and convincing them. He has not come out in favor of getting rid of the filibuster, without which you need 60 votes, 10 Republicans and all 50 Democrats, and there aren't 10 Republicans for anything. Doesn't Biden have to come to the party too?
I think that he absolutely does. And I do understand, you know, his concern, because obviously Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, I actually would disagree that it's the progressives, you know, who are, you know, the persons, you know, most responsible for this game of chicken. You obviously have two senators, you know, who have put a tremendous amount of pressure, who have not been as supportive of many important Democratic priorities, you know, given the majority that we have, you know, and just as recently as this past week, you had three moderate Democrats, you know, who basically have upended what many have called the cornerstone of the Build Back Better, the $700 million that could be, you know, extricated from being able to negotiate prices, you know, for Medicare drugs. You know,
700 billion, not 700 million, 700 billion.
Sorry, I mean, I'm thinking Massachusetts numbers and not U.S. numbers. But $700 billion, you know, the United States, you know, consumers in this country pay twice as much for prescription drugs. You know, there's a significant majority of both Democrats and Republicans who support being able to negotiate and lower drug prices. So, you know, this is sort of a pox on all of our houses. Ultimately, you know, President Biden is going to have to be a strong negotiator and levy a lot of pressure on individual legislators. But, you know, I think that the most important thing right now is what is going to happen with the debt ceiling limit. How does, you know, Mitch McConnell, who now is being hounded by former president, you know, the former guy, you know, to get rid of him, you know, as the minority leader. You know, I do think that the Republicans are going to have to step up, especially as it pertains to the debt limit, you know, increase.
Which is always, by the way, for those who are not students of this, which has always been bipartisan, despite the fact. I only have 30 seconds left, starting with you, Nadeem. Let's assume you're both wrong. in terms of your cautious optimism. What's the consequence for the Democratic Party, Nadeem? 30 seconds.
I mean, I think the Democratic Party has to be extremely unified and extremely tight in a way that the Republican Party has been over the last few years, to the detriment, of the country and its competitiveness. The Democrats could learn a thing or two if we can take a few pages from that book without being tremendously toxic. I think that's where we got to go, and that came straight from the top in the prior administration. I think Biden could have what it takes, but if we don't push this one across the line, the midterms could be quite bad. Shannon,
what happens if they can't pull it together? Your party can't pull it together. 30 seconds.
I think this is an existential threat, not only for the party, but the country. Because if we don't have some victories and show the American people that we can take the power and wield power to benefit Democrats, independents, and Republicans and make a difference in their lives, there will be some serious consequences that go beyond the economy.
Shannon O'Brien, Nadeem Mazen, I miss you both, and I hope to see you in person someday soon. Be well.
Miss you, Jim. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks.